Spring football begins on Saturday, and we're going to talk all about every storyline you're going to want to watch as BC prepares for the 2022 season. All of this and more on today's Locked On Boston College.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Boston College. I am your host, AJ Black. Happy Friday, everyone. All of you in the Northeast, hopefully you survive another snowstorm. Hopefully this will be the last one because spring football is right around the corner. And for Boston College, the days of the bubble are gone. You know, it was only 5 or 6 years ago now that BC used to play under that bubble on Alumni Stadium, and there'd be a snowstorm and it would collapse. Well, they get to stay in the nice plush fish field house and get ready for the 2022 season. So this is exciting because we've now been off of football since the beginning of December. Obviously, the Military Bowl was canceled because of COVID, and we haven't seen BC since they lost to Wake Forest right after Thanksgiving. So what are some of the big storylines heading into this season? And there's going to be about 5 of them heading in that we're going to start to watch for. First of all, the big storyline is going to be that offensive line. 4 offensive linemen for Boston College are gone. Tyler Vrabel, Alec Lindstrom, Zion Johnson, and Ben Petrula are all headed to the NFL, or hopefully for the NFL, which leaves Boston College with Christian Mahogany on his own little island. Well, Christian Mahogany, as I've said before, is good enough to be a offensive lineman to build around. He was excellent last year and one of the best on the team. So I think he's a good start, but you have to worry a little bit. There's going to be 4 other offensive linemen who really haven't had a ton of playing time around him. And with a new coach at offensive line, the names that you may assume could have been the starters for this year could change because Dave DeGuglielmo, he may have more of a style that he's looking for than what Matt Applebaum was looking for. So you might see some surprises in there. And there's a ton of names of players that you could be looking for. Now, Drew Kendall, he's going to be the probably go-to center. I think that one's one you could probably etch in stone. Unless he gets blown out of the water. Dwayne Alec is another one. He's a redshirt freshman or a sophomore at this point. He's also a center, from what I've heard. But I have to imagine Kendall will be the starting center heading into 2022. So he'll be one you're going to want to watch for. Then, at the guard position, you have a couple names to watch for. You have Finn Durstein, who everyone's been asking. You know, he's a 4-star recruit. You know, who is he ready to be that starter finally? I know he's been banged up for a couple years, but he's always been on the 2 deep. Is this finally the year that he jumps into the starting lineup? Or will BC keep Ozzie Trapillo at guard? Now, Trapillo is built like a tackle, but if you look at the depth at tackle, I feel like they have more options at tackle, so they might want to move Trapillo over to that guard position. So he'll be someone that is a name. And I think Trapillo will start somewhere next year. Whether that's guard or tackle, I'm not sure. Again, he's 6'8". And usually you put your 6'8 guys at tackle. So I'm guessing they'll move him over. But if you have another guard, you know, either you're going to have to slide a tackle over or go with a name that maybe you're not so familiar with. So maybe someone like Blarim Rastemi, who's been on the roster. He's going to be a junior next year. He's 6'3". He's the perfect size for a guard. He could have a big off spring and blast his way up. Then you look at the tackle positions. As I said, I'm going to go on record and guess that Trapillo will play at tackle this year. I think he will be a guy that they're going to want to do. Now, there's a bunch of other names. So Jack Conley is another tackle that you guys all saw last year in that Syracuse game. I think it was Syracuse or Louisville. He played a couple snaps and struggled bad. He had the worst Pro Football Focus grade in terms of blocking for BC all year long. He was yanked. They moved Zion Johnson over to tackle in the middle of the game. Don't get too hard on him. He's going to be a junior. I always go to Aaron Montero as a guy to watch, as a guy that I use as a measuring stick, because Montero was terrible his first couple years at BC, and then he figured it out and became a rock by the time he graduated. So Conley, you know, with the new offensive line coach, he could be someone to watch for. The other big one I've heard a lot about is Kevin Klein. Not Kevin Pine, Kevin Klein. Kevin Kline came to BC huge. Like he was an under-recruited guy from Florida. He's from Boca Raton. But I think he was like 6'6", 370 or something like that. Well, he's shed down the weight that he needs to. He's 6'6", 315, and from what I've heard, he's cracked the two deep. He's a name you're going to want to watch for. And I know a lot of people have been asking about Kevin Pine, another 4-star offensive lineman that they have. But I think Kevin Kline might be the name that you'd be watching for as a name that could potentially take that starting spot. So all of these different names, we're not going to be able to tell you who, but, when you get to the spring game, you might get a better feel when they're all playing together on the line. You'll get a chance to see who's with Christian Mahogany. But I wouldn't also be surprised if if Hafley and Jack McNulty make out two different lines and kind of mix them around during practice to see what works. So there could be a whole bunch of different things that could go on there. I think, though, the offensive line will be one that we're going to want to watch for because obviously the last 2 years, they underperformed. You had Zion Johnson and Alec Lindstrom and Christian Mahogany play well, but it always didn't seem like it clicked and meshed as a unit. They never seemed to play as like five really strong guys. They'd get all the press, the hype, but it never really felt like the unit as a whole was elite. It always felt like there was, Phil Jurkovec was running for his life, or they couldn't run for 2 yards. So I think that just in itself, to see how this group works, how this group practices, will be good. And, again, a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about, and we'll get to hear from Hafley on how it's going, but the practices are closed, so we won't be able to see, it's like BC's thing. We won't be able to see specifically what they're doing, and Hafley wants to hide as much as he can because that's kind of his thing. He's already said he's going to do that. So we won't be able to get that feel, but we'll get to see some of it in the spring game. We'll get to see some of these players and see what they can do. Now, in a moment, we're going to talk a little bit about the quarterback position, because I think that is another important piece that will be something that we're going to need to watch for this offseason. March Madness is only a few weeks away. That means you need to start thinking now about where you're going to be running your brackets this year. Are you going for the usual? Are you looking for the best? We've done our homework here, and we're running brackets with runyourpool.com. Along with standard brackets, Run Your Pool offers game types like Survivor or Pickaxe. Both really fun in their own way. You gotta check them out. They have options to edit scoring, and they offer more intel to make your picks. All the stuff you won't find on those other sites like ESPN or CBS. If you've got a business, Run Your Pool can help you take some of that madness magic and play alongside your employees or even gain customers. Plus, they offer full white glove customer support, custom branding, and one of the easiest 3-minute setups you'll ever find. Clearly, we believe in Run Your Pool because, like I said, we're running our brackets there ourselves. There's no truer test than that. If you want to play against us for a shot at a cash prize, join us at runyourpool.com/lockedon. And while you're there, create your own pool for your families and friends. Enter Pure Madness at checkout for $10 off your custom pool. All the rules and details will be available there. That's runyourpool.com/lockedon for your chance to win a cash prize. We look forward to seeing and beating you there. Now, it's February, and most of us have given up on their New Year's resolutions, but not this year. I'm sticking to my resolution to eat right, thanks to Built Bar. It almost feels like it's not really a resolution because I actually enjoy eating them. Have you tried the Puffs? If you haven't, you're missing out on one of the best Built Bars in their best tasting bars. Puffs are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy, they're not just a protein bar, they're a treat. And they're covered in 100% real chocolate. Puffs are a fan favorite with some incredible flavors, including yummy, cinnamony, churro, coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie. So good, they're going to be your new favorite. All Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate, yes, Puffs included, and they are delicious with 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Where are you going to beat that? You just can't. Compare that to a candy bar, it's not even a question. They have delicious flavors too, including mint brownie, coconut almond, and new this month, white chocolate cookies and cream. They're all delicious, and new flavors are coming out all the time. If they think of a flavor might be good, they're going to make it. It'll be delicious, and it'll be good to you. Go to Built.com and use promo code LOCK15, and you'll get 15% off your order. Again, use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. This is AJ Black. We are previewing spring football, which starts on Saturday in Chestnut Hill. And we'll get to start talking to some of the coaching staff and players again as they start to do their installation for fall football. Now, quarterback is a position that I think was one of the driving narratives in the 2021 season. We don't need to go back and get into the whole Phil Jurkovec and Dennis Grosel disaster, but there brought up there was a few things that I think that need to be addressed and that hopefully they'll have set up this season. First of all, Phil Jurkovec. There's going to be a new offense there. And yes, it's probably going to be pretty similar, but I want to see how John McNulty, the new offensive coordinator, tailors that offense to Phil Jurkovec's style. I want to see less of Jurkovec having to improvise and run for his life and more of him in the pocket or designed runs so that he's not getting killed out there. Because Jurkovec is a tough SOB. He is strong. He does those things, and that's great. We saw him make some fantastic plays last year. I just saw someone tweet out the Jermaine Johnson sack where he threw the ball basically over his shoulder for a catch. Like backwards over his shoulder for a catch. But I don't want to see that all the time because 2 straight years we've seen Jurkovec go down with injuries. We saw him get hammered. I mean, last year was fluky, but the year before he got banged up quite a bit. And he needs to figure out ways to get those yards, do the things he does without getting clobbered. Because it's going to take some wear off his tires and make him less effective and put him in risk of getting injured. So, when John McNulty, the new offensive coordinator, says that he's going to add some college elements, I hope there's some run-pass option in there, some RPO. Because I think Jurkovec could be really good with that and some design zone reads and things like that. I think if you get him running in more of a design set, like we saw against Georgia Tech had no clue how to stop him. If you add pieces of those elements in for Jurkovec, he's going to be even more successful and even more dangerous because now you have to guard against him throwing the ball, running the ball, all the different things. It really can stretch a defense. So I'm interested in the Jurkovec piece and how they tailor this offense to him to keep him healthy and to maximize what he can do. Secondly, I want to see, and this is more the background type of stuff, how they're going to replace the backup quarterback. Who's going to step up? Now, it seems to me Emmett Morehead is going to be the backup quarterback heading into 2022. He was a true freshman last year, and he played in one game a game and then like a mop-up duty like snap where he got sacked for a safety against Wake Forest. But he didn't, he had that one really long pass to Zay Flowers, and then he looked like a deer in headlights for the rest of the game, which isn't a fault of his own. He's a true freshman. He had, very little experience other than playing as a junior in high school. That's a lot to ask for a kid that age. And the staff clearly thinks a lot of him because they put him in that role to take over for Dennis Grosel, a guy that's played and started for 3 years. And, I know he struggled last year, but they thought that Morehead had that. So how are they going to get... I want to see the progression that Morehead makes because there's a lot on his plate for next year. Phil Jurkovec, as much as we don't want to talk about it, and it sucks that we have to, is injury prone. I mean, either if it's fluky or it's because he gets hit, right? Last year was fluky. The year before was because he was getting banged up. The backup quarterback role needs to be ready to play. And, I think more so than in 2021, my concern is that Morehead won't be there yet. He's going to be a redshirt freshman. He's, played like 25 snaps now. He's going to take, he needs to be out there doing what Grosel did last year during practices. Like you read the practice reports and you hear about the practice reports from the spring and summer last year. It was all about Grosel and Jurkovec. Now it's going to be Morehead and Jurkovec because not only do they have to get him ready as the backup, we got to start talking about what life is going to be like without Phil Jurkovec because it's only one more season. That's only 13 games, 15 if you want to say they're going to be national champions. I'm not going there, but that's what some of you might say. But this is this. You got to start now. You got to start now thinking about what your guy is going to be in 2023. And that sounds like it's going to be Emmett Morehead, but you also have Peter Delaportis, you have Matt Reeve, you've got Dalen Menard, you got some guys on the roster that could do that. But it looks like it's Morehead, and just seeing him develop. We're not asking him to be Phil Jurkovec, but being able to recognize pressure, being able to set his schemes in front of him and audible and understand the playbook a little better and being able to take hits a little bit more than he did last year. All of those things, I think, are going to start to develop during these practices. So hopefully you'll hear more about him having strong practices, making good passes, being electric, that kind of stuff, and starting to build his resume. So I think what you want to see from Moorhead is more of what we saw out of Dennis Grosel, but with a higher ceiling, of course. Now, in a moment, we're going to wrap up our conversation about spring football, and I'm going to give you my last thought of one storyline that you're going to want to watch for. But football is over, but basketball is in full steam for both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the number one spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season, and it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC odds right to the Olympic coverage and information. Head to their website today or use their mobile device to learn about their trends in action. Head on over to BetOnline, where the game starts. So spring football is upon us. So it's going to start tomorrow, and Boston College will start to, they're going to probably do some light stuff without pads, drills, things like that. But we'll get to also start talking to the staff and the players. And we talked in our first two segments about some of the storylines that you might want to watch for, which is the offensive line, the quarterback. I also love, my favorite part of spring and summer football is to see the new names that pop up, or names that jump up more than they had in years past. And you can go down the line and find those names of players that have really put themselves in the forefront of our discussions by their practice and some of the plays they made during those practices. So names that from years past that came up during those practices: Cam Horsley, defensive tackle; Jaden Williams, wide receiver; Tajee Johnson, wide receiver. You heard about all of these guys at practice. Even Hunter Long a couple of years ago really solidified his name in the BC public discussion based off his practice play. So Boston College this offseason have had over a dozen players enter the transfer portal. Basically, most of the, and I don't want to say this in like a mean way, but like a lot of the upper class guys or grad students that just weren't going to fit on the two deep or needed to move on because they were younger guys still waiting to jump up, those older guys kind of moved on. So you saw guys like Jelani Galloway and CJ Lewis and Tyler Days, Joseph Sparacio, Hugh Davis, even Aaron Boumeri. All these guys were kind of spots. Either they weren't going to play or they were, holding up the development of guys that needed to develop. So this gives Boston College a lot of chances to fill in some of that two deep with names that maybe you're not as familiar with. And you can look up and down that roster and see guys that maybe will be worth watching this offseason. You look at like linebacker, right? So you're going to have Cam Arnold and then Bryce Steele and Vinny DePalma. Those will be your three starting linebackers, depending on the scheme they use and how many they put out there. But who goes in after that? Who's going to jump up? Is it going to be someone like Davion Crouch, a freshman? Is it going to be someone like Owen McGowan or Casey McPhinney, who are redshirt freshmen? Jalen Blackwell, who's a redshirt freshman as well. So you got a couple guys there. On the defensive back front, could it be someone like Jalen Cheek, who was a highly regarded recruit who came to Boston College, but didn't really play all that much last year? With Brandon Sebastian and Sean Asbury gone and JT Thompson III, there's going to be some spots on that defensive back depth chart to play. Or could it be Jalen Williams, who is that, the BC football player who just set a track record out there? Could he jump up? And then you look at the safety position because there's also space there. Could Steve Lubisher or Connor Greco finally get their spot? Or will it be someone else up there like Jamera Jones? They call him Bugs. He's a redshirt freshman. There's all these different names at different positions that they're hungry. And Hafley has made it part of his culture to really push for competition. And that competition starts at spring practice. And that's where guys can jump up and start to get those snaps with the first team, get those snaps with the second. Hey, even on the second team, it only takes one injury for those guys to jump up to the first team, right? So I'm very interested to see what names start to pop up during spring practice. What new names could we see on that two deep who could play a big role heading into 2022? So that, I think, is our final storyline heading into this. Obviously, we're going to also want to see all these new coaches, right? Jeff Hafley has almost an entirely new offensive staff. I can't wait to hear. We already talked to John McNulty, the offensive coordinator, but we haven't yet talked to Savon Huggins, who's doing the running backs. We haven't talked to Darryl Wyatt, who hasn't officially been announced yet, the wide receivers coach, or Dave DiGuglielmo, who just looking at him, I can't wait to hear what he has to say, the new offensive line coach. So getting a chance to also talk to these players and coaches to see, how the offseason went, how they're feeling. Like hearing from Phil Jurkovec, how his hand's feeling. I mean, we all saw what he looked like those last couple of games. It'd be nice to hear, 4 months later, how his hand is feeling and how healed it feels, how it feels to grip a football, things like that. So that's our talk on football. Now, this weekend, there's a lot of football and basketball and hockey as well. I totally forgot to bring up women's lacrosse, who had they come from behind victory on Wednesday against UVA. They started off slow, and then Charlotte North took over, had 6 goals. They outscored them UVA 13-5 in the second half, and earned their victory. A little tighter than you'd want, because BC has been blowing out everyone. But hey, that's a character-building win right there. Now, BC hockey, they have a 2-game series against BU this weekend, and hopefully they can get a win out of this, because I can't wait for the season to end. Baseball has a 3-game series this weekend event against George Mason, Presbyterian, and USC Upstate. So they got a 3-game series. Hopefully they can figure some stuff out, especially that bullpen. And basketball, they return home for senior night against Clemson, who the SI Clemson site just said PJ Hall, one of their star players, is possibly going to miss the game due to an injury. That would be a big blow for the Tigers. We'll have all our recaps of everything happening this weekend, including any breaking news, up on our show on Monday. You're going to want to check out Locked On BC to find out all your news. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at Locked On BC or at AJBlack_BC. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to us on YouTube. Have a great weekend, everyone. We'll see you all again soon. Take care, everyone.